in a space with people who I think are far much more intelligent and obviously far much more suave than I am. I'm looking over here at Jeff's shirt, and I like I like that color. And people who have more hair than I do as well. I see you, Brandon. So with that having been said, my name is Louis L. Reed. I am the National Director of Director of National Organizing and Partnerships for an organization called Cut 50. I'm going to give you some inside baseball. Next week, we will be changing our name to Dream Corps Justice. So we will be like the artist formerly known as Prince, so to speak. Essentially what my responsibility is to manage our partnerships. And our relationships nationwide. So what that means is, everyone from our influencers to our artists and athletes, to our individuals who are doing the work on the ground. And I manage the nation's largest bipartisan coalition of impacted organizers and advocates called the Empathy Network. And when you think about the Empathy Network, essentially, we are the people who help the people who need the help. So it's comprised of people who are justice impacted, people who are lead organizers on the ground connected to their elected officials, pushing for systemic change. And I should also say that we are also co-founded by CNN political commentator and now Reform Alliance CEO Van Jones. And we are also co-founded by Jessica Jackson, who is the legal mentor to Kim Kardashian.
That's great. No, and I know Brendan has done a lot of work with you guys, and that's fantastic. I think we talked about, going right into questions. I know Jeff Corliss actually has got or he might have just stepped out. He did just step out. I've got a question, but if somebody else, here, Jeff's coming back in, sorry. Jeff, you with us? I think you're with us. So, Louis, what's the best? I'll start it off, and then we'll have other people ask questions. What's the best first step to get involved with this? I mean, this is such a massive issue. There's a lot of jurisdictions involved, a lot of different voices. What's your advice on how to get going? How to get started?
Look at your bank account. Seriously, and I'm not even being facetious when I say that. So let's think about this. I had a conversation with somebody yesterday, and she was like, "Louis, what can I do, considering that I'm not impacted by the criminal justice system?" And I said, "Are you working?" And she said, "Yes." I said, "Are you under indictment for tax evasion?" She said, "No." I said, "When was the last time you looked at your earnings statement?" Right? Think about that. They take taxes out to fund our mass criminal justice issue. And I want to break it down for you guys in a little bit more granularly. Gregory looked like he's a guy who probably knows that 1 and 1 either amounts to either 2 or 11. Either way, it adds up to something. So let's think about this. The Department of Correction is the only business in the United States of America that we reward for failure. It's the only business that we reward for failure. If this was Starbucks, if this was McDonald's, if this was another Fortune 100 company, we would have laughed them out of town, put up a do not enter sign, and they would have never done business again. However, the Department of Corrections is the only business that we reward for failure. And let me explain that to you. If Brendan, heaven forbid, he gets arrested on a Thursday, he is released on a Monday. He comes back, he goes back to the county jail with Gregory and Jack next Tuesday. The Department of Corrections gets awarded money, or they have money allocated to them based off of the projected number of people that they are going to have in custody based off of previous years. That is rewarding people for failure. It's rewarding the system for failure. And we need to be creating springboards to opportunities rather than trapdoors to failures for people who have been impacted by the criminal justice system. And I'll get back to the top of your point in a second, Mark, but I just wanted to walk us through this thread. And so one of the things that I'm thinking about is, as we reimagine justice, we should be incentivizing wardens not to have as many people in their facilities as possible, but we should be incentivizing them to have as less people in their facility as possible. And there should be some type of performance evaluation, not based off of how many people that you have, but how you can reduce your prison population, i.e. whether that is putting people out on some type of work release program, considering that people demonstrate a behavior that constitutes such. Just pause for a second and let me digress. In the state of Connecticut, where I'm from, we work with the Reform Alliance, and we put out what we call a safer plan during full throttle of the COVID pandemic. 7 out of the 10 hotspots in the United States of America are in jails and prisons for COVID. So we put out a safer plan. That safer plan is 5 points. Essentially, first and foremost, what we recommended through the National Governors Association was as follows. You immediately suspend all medical copays nationwide. If people are incarcerated and they're exhibiting signs of COVID-19, they shouldn't have to pay $10 to go down to medical every time they go down to medical. We should suspend medical copays. The second thing is that we should give parole consideration for vulnerable populations, 65 and older especially. The third thing, people who are within 6 to 14 months of release, they should be released. They're going to get home. They're going home inevitably. Why are we keeping them in this system? The third thing, or the fourth thing, we need to have PPEs in every unit, in every institution, in every in every state, in all 4 corners of our country. Oh, and by the way, to make it a little bit more convenient, we're not saying Department of Corrections Commissioner Mark, you have to bear the burden of doing so. We just got $10 million from Jack Dorsey. We just got $50,000 from Madonna. We will supply both your inmate population and your staff population so that there isn't that rise of COVID infection. And last but not least, there needs to be hand sanitizing stations in every unit, in every institution, all across the United States of America. It is absolutely befuddling to me that a state like New York can have so-called inmate labor producing hand sanitizing equipment for the general public, but they can't use it themselves because it's considered contraband because there's an alcohol base to it. And so that was the 5-point proposal that we gave to through the National Governors Association to the executives and heads of state, so that we could reduce the rate of infection of people who are incarcerated and that we can increase the quality of health. So when I go back to the point that we are rewarding institutions and Department of Corrections for failure, that's essentially what I mean. And so to get back to the top of your point in terms of what can we do? What can we do? There's several things that we can do. Number one, very practically, you can text the word leader to 97483, and you can be involved in the Empathy Network. That's the nation's largest bipartisan coalition of its kind. Again, that word is leader to 97483. The other thing that you can do is that when we have policies that we are pushing. Oh, and by the way, I should also say that we are the winningest criminal justice organization in recent history. We have passed more than 30 bills in less than 4 years. And just to quantify that number for you, I want to talk to you one singular bill that we passed, the Federal First Step Act. That was a bipartisan bill that was passed through this outgoing administration. That one bill alone released more than 15,000 people from federal custody. And if you think that that number is impressive, let me give you another number that's impressive. That's more than 250,000 years of human freedom restored back into our communities. That just one bill alone. We also, through our Dignity for Incarcerated Women's campaign, we passed, I believe it was about 12 bills nationwide, and we have successfully impacted 33,000 women who are incarcerated. That's a third of the entire nation's incarcerated women's population. And when we're talking about impact, and I'm certain that this is something that Michelle can probably appreciate, women will no longer be shackled while they are pregnant and giving birth. I mean, we're men. I've never given birth in my life, but you can just see the reaction of the men that are in the room. Imagine how appalling that is for a woman.
I don't want to interrupt you, but I want to bring up something that I've learned from you and Van through the years that I've known you all, is that our criminal justice system, a big lie that we tell is that it's focused on rehabilitation and not punishment.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
that really, if we look at what you're talking about right now, especially the people who are in jail, the reason we're not giving them the due afforded health and safety precautions is because we're not focused on them as individuals. We're not focused on them as people. We're focused on them as numbers that we're punishing.
I mean, look, that I am speaking from the gospel of Brendan, without question. The least of these that are among us. And so when you talk about prison being more punitive than it is about rehabilitation, well, let's look at the evidence of that, right? I was in an institution, the only institution in the United States of America that offered college training. The reason why I had been able to have the benefit of matriculating through university is because I happened to be placed at an institution that offered that. If we are going to be focused on rehabilitation, don't you think that there should be some type of vocational trainings within our Department of Corrections? Oh, and by the way, the First Step Act actually calls for people such as myself to go back into institutions on a volunteer basis to facilitate those types of trainings. I mean, you have people who are at the ready to go back into institutions and, facilitate courses, et cetera. And then when people are released from prison, Brendan, I'm going to bring up something that I worked on in the state of Connecticut. It was interesting how in the state of Connecticut, if you were incarcerated, and you'll notice I never use the word inmates because our theory of change is legislation through humanization. All right. These are mothers, brothers, aunts, uncles, somebody's family member. But when I was working on a piece of legislation in the state of Connecticut, it was just odd that people who were incarcerated, you were able to do a cosmetology course while you were incarcerated. You were able to do a barbering course while you were incarcerated. You were even able to earn good time credit as a result of participating in these two named courses. But guess what? When you were released and you tried to apply for a vocational licensure in one of those areas, the State Department of Public Health that regulates licensing in Connecticut, they said that you were ineligible. Why? Because you had a felony conviction. It was just baffling. How is it that it's good enough to be serviced inside and you can earn good time credit so that you can get home early, but you can't go
use that skill? Yeah.
This is bureaucracy at its epitome. And so when we're talking about creating those opportunities for success, this is what Brandon, exactly what he was talking about, right? Rehabilitation. How do we give people the tools? How do we make sure that people who have smart tablets in Department of Corrections, when they do have these smart tablets, and oh, by the way, they are paying for them, that they're not just watching movies and they're developing some muscular atrophy in their brain? And how can we connect them to education services that can be through a secure portal so that they can have tools and make a meaningful contribution back into their communities once they are released? And so those are some of the measures that how you guys can get involved, supporting legislation that we have, staying connected with the things that we have going on, and, essentially being ambassadors in your silos about the issues that are happening. Look, the entire nation was caught off guard by what happened at the Capitol. We weren't. The entire 4 years and I'm not trying to assault or disparage anybody's political persuasion, but for the most part, for the entire 4 years that this outgoing administration has been in office, we've been seeing a dress rehearsal. In some way, shape, or form, we have been seeing a dress rehearsal to what accumulated on the Capitol last week. And so we weren't caught off guard by that. That's the reason why at the Dream Corps, we've been talking about how can we be better than before? How can we bridge these gaps? We know that Republicans at their best believe in liberty. Democrats at their best believe in justice. And all of us at our best should be believing in liberty and justice for all, not for the privileged few, but for the majority. Because last I checked in the Constitution, It said that we hold these truths to be self-evident, not a majority of the population, or not that, even 99%. This was the entire country. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men should be, in the pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness. And so if we are going to be reframers of a new America, right, this is how we truly make America great again. When one rises, we all rise. And when one fails, essentially it's a failure for most of us. And I think that our Department of Corrections is failing nationwide.
Jeff, you're back with us. You want to ask a question?
I do. Thanks, Liz. Really appreciate it. I'm in Southern California and right in the heart of Orange County, California, where we have a battle going on between a county sheriff and a Superior Court judge who is deciding on who gets released during COVID-19 outbreaks. And so I'm curious to hear your thoughts on what the implications are of these immediate decisions that are brought upon us by the pandemic, when you've had a county jail system reduce population and tier inmates based on level of offenses they're serving time for, to safely release those to address the issues, the challenges that you find inside of a jail system, brought upon us by the pandemic, to reduce population and be able to create more opportunities for social distancing and, health and safety, and get high risk inmates out that, you certainly don't want contracting the virus, that are in for a low level offense, and maybe they're at the tail end of their service. I'm just curious, or serving their time. I'm curious kind of what you think the implications are of getting into a back and forth between an elected county sheriff and a judge, and how these policy decisions ultimately get decided, whether it's in the executive branch or the judicial branch, ultimately deciding who gets released and how, and if there's any alignment in how that judicial or that adjudication occurs as it relates to some of the reforms that maybe we're seeing the implementation of at the federal level from the First Steps Act, and how that starts to trickle down into the state and local prison systems, because you want it to happen at all levels, right? So I'm just curious. We have immediate decisions and then long-term policy decisions. What are the implications? How do we align that process?
Well, I think that we have to be. We are something that we have in our lifetime at the very least. And so, the short-term decisions, they have to be practical, they have to be safe, and they have to be intelligent, right? And so we made it easy. Again, going back to the SAFER plan, we made it easy. We made it easy for folks. If there were some additional recommendations that we could raise. For instance, if people are arrested for, misdemeanor offenses, then why can't they get a citation to appear in court? Why do they have to be booked? Why do they have to, be placed in county jail? Why is the process so long? I mean, it continues to kind of drudge along that line of bureaucracy. From the long-term game, I can tell you that, this is going to be surprising for some people to hear, but Republicans have stepped up in a way that has been just absolutely phenomenal in leaders. And, I remember 2 years ago when Van and we were at CPAC, and, he spoke about Republican leadership. He got dragged on Black Twitter and was trending for having the courage to say, hey, look, Governor Bryant in Mississippi, right? He was a leader on criminal justice reform. I can tell you that the backdoor channels that we use in order to get President Trump to sign the First Step Act and to support the First Step Act, that was through direct conversations that Van was having with the likes of Governor Bryant and other people, right? And so it's not a one-party issue. This is an all-people issue. And that's the point that we keep driving home. For systemic change, right? We need to have people. We need to have people making intelligent decisions. This stuff is not hard. This should not be a matter of political football. This should not be a matter of political kill the carrier, right? On who locks up how many people the most and who keeps people. That stuff is freaking, it's crazy. It's crazy. Now look, there are some people who, in my mind, probably should not be released from custody. I got some cousins that if I was walking down a brightly lit a street on a sunny July afternoon, I would probably turn around until they say, "Hey, cuz," I'm like, I didn't realize it was you, right? But we're not talking about those individuals. We're talking about people, the majority of the people who are arrested that find themselves inflating our prison system, our county jails and our prison systems, are people who are arrested on low-level offenses. I mean, think about this, Jeff. We are criminalizing poverty. We're criminalizing substance abuse. If you have a substance abuse issue, if you got stopped right now after this call and you got pulled over and you had, some Percocets in a container that did not have your name on it. Number one, that's an arrestable offense because you are transporting somebody else's narcotics, right? But it may be an arrestable offense, but does it have to be? Right? Officers have something, last I checked, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but officers have something, last I checked, that's called a discretion. You don't have to arrest your way out of an issue all the time. You can issue a citation. There are alternative methods that you can employ so that we don't have people literally standing in front of the levees of this pandemic, waiting for them to breach and be drowned in despair. We don't have to have it. Look, I got an uncle right now who is in federal custody for a wiretap. And if you guys know anything about federal law, basically what that means is that he was on a call with someone and there wasn't even specificity. They brought some expert in to say that him saying that he was going to Miami meant that he was going to be going down there with the attempt to connect with a distributor in order to bring back some marijuana. So in any event, he's currently in federal custody in a county jail, and he's on a respirator right now. He's chronic asthmatic and he's on a respirator. And reason being is why he's on a respirator is because there is a COVID outbreak in the Wyatt Detention Center. Oh, and by the way, the officer who had COVID, the officer who brought it in, exhibited signs of COVID on the unit for 3 days. And the people who were detained kept complaining to the upper brass, and then they finally forced the individual not to work. And the reason why he refused, he was showing up to work is because he had a financial commitment. He was working overtime. He had to basically provide for his family. Like it's things like that. That's just it just drives me crazy. I don't know if you can tell.
So we got you just for a few more minutes. Does somebody have one more question?
Just because I know some of the gray areas, Lewis has inspired me. Lewis, can you explain a little bit about, you mentioned all these people who've gotten out of incarceration because of the First Step Act. Can you explain a little bit about how that process has worked and how some of the hypocrisy of drug laws and things like this, things that aren't illegal anymore? So we're letting people out of prison because simply the sign of our times has changed.
Yeah, and so look, there was a time in our country, and I'm not a racist at all. I'm actually mixed. There was a time in our country when we thought that the only place that we needed to lock people up was in the inner cities, because they had a crack epidemic and they had a heroin epidemic in the Comptons of California, on the south sides of Chicago, Illinois, of the Bridgeports of Connecticut, etc. And then slowly but surely, there was something that crept in. There was something that crept in that was called opioids, and it took place in the form of Percocets or something to that degree. And then it infiltrated the Greenwiches of Connecticut and the Orange counties of California and the opulent areas. And now they didn't have a problem. We have a problem. And the moment that we have a problem, when you have people who are in power and positions of affluence and influence, the moment that they have to lock their own up, now we have to start changing laws. Wait. Hold up. It was cool when we were locking them up, but now we have to lock my kids up. Now we need a congressional mandate. We got to have all these committees and stuff. And that's the hypocrisy of our system. And so even think about what Brendan was talking about. One of the provisions of the First Step Act was the crack cocaine provision, right? Where 95% of the people released under that provision happen to be African-American. Well, in 2010, Obama passed the Fair Sentencing Act. Essentially what that means is that there was 100-to-1 ratio for crack cocaine. If you got busted with coke, you received a penalty that was far less severe than if you got busted with crack. And that wasn't retroactive. And so we had to come back along during the First Step Act, and we had to make that retroactive. Now you have something that's called marijuana, where everybody is selling it. It's legal, but you have people who are left behind in the system. I know a guy right now who's serving life. He's doing a life sentence for something that is now legal, for a quantity amount that is now legal, which, I mean, this is how our system is currently working. But in closing, this is what I am going to say. This is how our system is working, but I am encouraged that this is how we are going to change our system, because those closest to the problem are also closest to the solution, but furthest from resources and the power. And I think that the intellectual property that we have on this line, I think that the soul power that we have on this call, I really think that we can stand in that gap and bridge that chasm. And I think that the work that you guys are doing respectively, I think that if that is combined, I really, really, really do think that the First Step Act will literally be a first step in a right direction of where we can land. And I don't care if whether or not it's a bipartisan, if it's a Democratic administration, an independent administration, a Republican administration. One of the things I always say, people in the prison house don't care who's in the White House, so long as they can get back home to their mama's house.
Lewis, thank you so much for making the time, sharing your story and your commitment to this really ingestible. I mean, we've got to find a way to do better, and you're really helping us see the path forward. And I appreciate you taking the time. Keep up the good work. Excited about the name change. Is it cool if I share your contact details with the group?
Of course.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Let's make sure we all stay connected. Jeff, thanks, Jeff, and thanks, Greg, and thanks, Brendan, as well. I look forward to seeing you soon.
Keep up the good work, buddy. Thanks. Ciao. BK,
Thanks,
good
Mark.
job. Good job.
Mark, I'm dropping off for my 11:30 as well, and thank you. I enjoyed listening to him and look forward to more discussions with all of you. Fascinating, really.
Yeah, it's an important topic. I appreciate making the top.
Good to see you all. See you on the next one or sooner.
That was great, Mark.
Good job. Thanks for the intro.
Yeah, no, I mean, he's a really interesting guy. And, I've been working on this since 2018 with him and teammates of his. So it's definitely something we're going to see keep evolving because, one bill is not enough. There's still lots of areas to address and different things. Like you said, these provisions, they need to just be ironed out. There's a lot of bureaucracy to this. So.
Yeah, it was just the scale of it too was interesting. What Jeff was talking about, obviously this division of government between the executive and legislative and judicial, and where to start. But I got the sense that the executive branch is probably needs a lot more attention to drive this issue through.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, everybody, enjoy America. It's a hell of a day to be an American.
Oh boy! All right.